So you've done your preparation, it's the big day and you are about to go live with the big session and you are about to walk out on stage. Unless you are made of steel, you are feeling pretty underconfident right now. But because of your great prep and your detailed agenda, that's going to help. That's going to let you know that what you're going to ask the audience to do is going to work and it's going to achieve the aims. So there's a bit of confidence you can gain from that. But those last few minutes before you're about to walk on stage are always the toughest time. I see my role when I'm running a big event as a conductor of the audience, if you like. So the audience are the kind of talent. They're the people that we want to get the best from, get their ideas, get their thoughts. And my role as conductor is to work out when to bring them in, how to bring them in, how to raise the energy, how to lower the energy, how to get them listening and concentrating, etc. So it kind of works for me to think about my role in that regard. And just before I'm about to go on stage, I will typically go and hide. This is the point where I don't want the client or the host of the conference to be sharing their worries with me. They will have done that for the last hour. I'm always there at least an hour, hour and a half before the event. And that's when your job really changes to trying to manage nerves. Of course, you're trying to manage your own nerves, but typically a client who is the face of or name behind a big conference are pretty worried themselves. So there's a whole lot of reassurance that it's well planned and it will work. But for the last 5 or 10 minutes, I go and hide. And I'll sneak out the back of the stage and just want to be on my own, just leveling myself and getting myself ready to go on the stage. And then I arrive on stage and here is my sneaky trick. My detailed agenda has word for word the introduction that I'm going to state. Even to the point that the very first line always says, "Hello, my name's Kieron and I am your facilitator for today." I literally have that written down. I also have the words smile and slow written across the top because there's nothing quite like nerves to make you stop smiling and indeed rattle through as fast as possible when no one understands what you're saying. So I have a word for word bulleted list. Best to use 14-point font with double line spacing. There's a little tip so you can find where you are in there. Countless times I've been in a session and I go off piste and then I'm looking down at my bulleted script and I can't find where I am, and that's kind of gets a bit more stressful. So 14-point double lines really helps in your script. But keep the introduction short. You want it to give a flavour of the agenda. It's pretty rare that I'm going to take them right through the agenda. That's pretty boring to hear, but I might want to showcase a couple of things that are happening later in the day. Because if there's a good keynote speaker or there's a really interesting session or a great lunch or whatever it might be, then showcase that so you're just keeping people a bit thinking about the day and thinking about how much they're looking forward to parts of the day. So my role once the session's underway is to keep an eye on the audience. My role is to check their energy levels, keep them interested and manage their interaction with the speaker or speakers or the conversation topics that we've got lined up for them. So it's really important to me that I want to be able to be in the audience as much as possible. So I quite often will walk off the stage and wander around the audience, stand near tables, stand near members. I try not to block their view as often as possible. Interesting to think about where you're standing. Sometimes you're right in the way of people. And I'm also, of course, trying to watch to see who's might have questions, who's chatting to their mates. If there's lots of people on their phone, I might go and do that head teacher thing and go and stand near them so they can see that I'm watching, make them pay attention. So all of that kind of stuff at the beginning and indeed throughout the session is what I'll be doing. If you're doing a Q&A type session or some sort of feedback with a speaker, one of the things I love to use is some audience engagement technology. The one I love most is called Live Interactive, which is a product by the Live Group. And it's so useful at giving each of the tables an iPad. They can type answers into the iPad and that can be displayed then on the screen, and indeed importantly as a facilitator I can be watching a master version of all of the points that the tables are making. This changes everything in a conference, from random hands up, which is about the worst and most scary thing to facilitate because you've no idea what question's coming next, to an organised way of putting questions to a speaker or a panel. So I can frame 4 or 5 questions that are all broadly the same from 10 different tables and put those to the panel as one package of questions. Really helps in making it flow better and really clearly showing to the participants that you are listening to them and you're capturing everything that they send in via their tables. So it works brilliantly. I'm a very big advocate of it. I often will use that as well to put questions to a panel on behalf of the audience. So it doesn't need to have the audience involved in that. I can be saying, here's a question from table 1 and put that to a speaker. But I quite often will then go to table 1 with a microphone and ask them to expand on their point. It's a great way of transforming a conference from the boring hands up, just let's all throw random questions up, to something that's a bit more managed and covers the ground that you want to cover. A quick note on hands up questions. So firstly, if you go to a Q&A and you say, okay, has anyone got any questions? The first hand up, if it zooms up really quick, probably avoid them for the day. They're generally not always they've come with something they want to get off their chest, so you might not want to go to them first. You might want to pick them up at least later and put their question in amongst some others. And on that point, taking 2 or 3 questions at a time. So I will begin, if it's a good question, I'll put it to the panel or speaker. So I'll take it from the audience member and put it to the panel. If it's a difficult question or challenging question, then I might then say, let's take 2 or 3 questions at a time. And so I'll pick up 2 more questions. I'm doing 2 things there, of course. One is I'm giving the speaker or panel some time to think. And secondly, I'm giving them the opportunity to spend longer answering the questions that are perhaps more constructive and a little less time on some of the stuff that might be more difficult or challenging. Not always appropriate for everything. Sometimes you want to get into those difficult questions, but equally there's a balance between letting the conference head in a negative direction versus a more positive and overcoming barriers as opposed to talking about the barriers. It's important in all events to try and avoid it being a negative spin. Because typically the first comment or 2 tends to lead what the rest of the comments are likely to be, the theme of them. So you want ideally to have some more positive building questions, assuming that's what you're trying to achieve in your conference, of course, or your event. And you might plant questions at this stage. So nothing wrong with having a couple of people ready to ask the first couple of questions, which you know what they're going to be, and they're going to be a bit more positive. So that's how you handle some of the sort of more open, put your hands up if you want to speak. And a word about your role when interacting with the audience. So microphones on a large event, if you've got more than 100 people, you're probably going to need microphones. And most people aren't very comfortable with a microphone. They don't like the sound of their voice, or they don't want to hold it. A couple of things. I nearly always try and hold the microphone for them. That means I can regulate how close or near, how close to their mouth to get the microphone, depending on the volume. It also means I'm in control. If they're going on too long, I can take the microphone physically away from them. So if you hand them the microphone, you'll lose both of those, and often you'll see people holding the microphone, right down, really low, and it's very difficult to hear them. Next on that is about confidence building for your audience. So people often, some of the best ideas will come from people who might be the most reticent or nervous to speak in front of a group. My job as a facilitator at that stage is to help and encourage. So what I will do is I will get them looking me in the eye. So they typically will do that anyway because people are a bit nervous with the microphone. I'm holding the microphone and I'm direct eye contact with them, and I'm going to then turn them to whichever way I want to. So this might be, if they're really nervous, I might try and turn them slightly away from the audience towards the stage perhaps. I might kneel down next to them so that they're talking down at me and not starting to not focus on the rest of the room. Or if it's being filmed, or indeed it's a panel event, then I might want to be directly having them facing into a camera or the stage. So think about where you're positioning yourself in order to help your audience members play their part and get involved. And with microphones, there's always a question about whether to have microphone runners. On the really big events, sort of when you're 200 to 300 people or more, having other people that can run around with microphones can save you a bit of time getting to people in the audience. 2 things to worry about here. One is you are no longer in control. What you'll have is a runner with their hand up often, sometimes with a number on a card to signal which microphone it is that they've got, standing next to someone who wants to make a point. You may or may not want that point at that stage, but it gets harder to ignore when someone's standing there. The other big thing is it means you're not in the audience, or you could be in the audience as well, but you want to be in the audience. So you taking the microphone and taking it to people as you go around the audience can work brilliantly for you getting a relationship built with your audience. So think hard about whether you really need a runner or runners. I would often have one at the back if it's a big room. I might have just one at the back and I will deal with the front. Here is the great facilitator secret that none of our clients know about until now. We're probably not listening when a participant is giving their feedback in a room. You've got so many things on your mind. When I'm in a room and I'm running a feedback session, I'm thinking about the time. I'm looking around to see who else wants to come in on it. How much more content do I have? That's the killer question, isn't it? Always is, have I got 100 questions and I've got 15 minutes, or have I got one question and 15 minutes? Because it changes how you want to answer that question, doesn't it? So there's a lot going on in my mind. I'm thinking about breaks. I'm thinking about how's it going? Is this a good question? How's the speaker on the stage getting on? Is the microphone near enough to this person? Are they nervous? Are they making sense? All of those things are going on in my head whilst I'm looking at you with a microphone, smiling and nodding, making it look like I'm totally focused on you. When I have not always paid full attention to the question, I've got a little trick to share, which is, how, if they've been going on for a while, how would you summarize that in just a few words so we can more easily put it to a speaker? Or if I'm using a flip chart in a smaller event, I might use a flip chart. I might use that question then as well. It's a great way of forcing the speaker, the audience member, to summarize their own words for you. So don't be afraid to use that. And of course, in our golden rules of facilitation, the audience is the expert. So you're effectively using them to their expertise to summarize their own work. So getting them to summarize can really bail you out when you've not really been paying as much attention as perhaps you might have been. So a couple of words about confidence, your personal confidence. Running a big conference or event is scary. And it's more scary than the smaller ones, isn't it? I get scared even now. I've run hundreds of them. And for the last 5 or 10 minutes before I'm going on stage, I'm pretty scared. There are 3 things that will help you be more confident and get out there on stage and get on with your job and do your amazing job with your participants. Number 1, have a script. My facilitator agenda goes on for pages and pages and has a detailed line by line what I'm going to say at each part of the conference. It gives me enormous confidence knowing it's there, knowing that if the worst happened and I walked on stage and went completely blank or had a panic attack or some terrible thing happened, I can read my notes if I need to. So that's number 1. Make sure you've written it out. It also helps you think through how you're going to introduce each session, which is no bad thing. And typically what happens, of course, is because you've done that work, when you're on the stage, you're only glancing at your notes really because you've already done the work. So that's the first one, have a script. Number 2 is protect your time just before the event starts. So that last 10 or 15 minutes when your nerves will be really getting up there, I tend to hide, but whatever works best for you. I like to pace up and down out of sight and just go through in my mind what I'm going to say when I walk on stage. But you need to remember that at this stage, you are about to take on the most important role that's going to happen at this conference. And you need to protect your time so that you can get focused on that. So don't get distracted. This is the point when the client's most worried. This is the point when you need to just protect your time. I equally do that at breaks. I will often go away and just recover a little bit, have a think about what we're doing next, play through how things have gone. I don't really want to be talking to the delegates at break time because it tends to use your energy levels more, and I want to keep as much of that back as I can for the main event. So I use hiding, but protecting your time is what's important. And the third confidence booster is to focus on just one thing at a time. I use this throughout my working career. If I've got a particularly stressful week, month or day, what I'll try and do is make sure I focus only on the next thing. If it's my 9 till 10 meeting, I'll think about that rather than the whole day together, which makes it feel quite overwhelming sometimes. So same with running conferences and events. What I will do is make sure I've really well prepared my introduction and the introduction to the first session, and whatever is running up till the first break. So I will have that all really locked down, and then I'm a little less bothered about what's going to happen after break, because I know I've got some time then to have a look back at my notes, have a think about it, and get myself ready for that stage of the day. And likewise lunch and the afternoon break, etc. So definitely try and keep your mind focused on the next thing that's happening. Don't let yourself get carried away worrying about the whole day in one go, because that can be quite challenging and is a bit of a confidence knocker rather than a confidence booster.